Welcome to the SoulScape Show, where together we will explore and discover the depth and breadth of your soul. This is a very special show with co-hosts Gabrielle Spencer and special co-host guest Sara Landon. Gabrielle Spencer is known for conscious wealth creation. She is a multidimensional intuitive channel and channels the golden beings of light, Kuan Yin, Tehote, and many others in her healing sessions. She is an inspirational speaker, author, and practical spiritualist who's considered a global leader on abundance, raising your vibration to reclaim your power. Gabrielle shares next level spiritual tools, clearings, and activations to unite your heart, your mind, your spirit, and soul to allow you to crack the code on designing, creating, and living the life of your dreams that's filled with abundance. And Sara Landon is a globally celebrated transformational leader, visionary, entrepreneur, spiritual advisor, and channel of the Council. The Council is an energetic presence of expanded awareness and higher level consciousness, offering a grander perspective of the human experience and the wisdom to live one's highest potential. Together, Sara and the Council are guiding people to answer the profound questions: who am I? Why am I here? What is my life's purpose? And how do I live it? And today, Gabrielle and Sara will be discussing the power of forgiveness to regain your inner strength, clarity, truth, and power.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sara Landon, and I'm here with my dear friend and one of my favorite people, Gabrielle Spencer. And we are here to just have some fun today, to talk about some deep questions, but to do so in a way that really keeps it real. And we have fun with some of these deeper spiritual conversations. So I want to welcome Gabrielle Spencer. We are so excited to be here and happy to have this conversation with all of you.
Thank you, Sara, for being here. I'm so excited to do this with you. This is going to be so much fun. The reason Sara and I are together is because when we get together, some really cool information comes together, and we thought it would be great to take questions from our audience and answer them for you so that you too can understand what's going on out there in a really practical, applicable way to your life. Because that's what this is really all about, is just jumping in and living it and not making it so gosh darn hard, right, Sara? It's really not hard, but the more we think about it, I think the harder we make it, don't you think?
I think it's actually so easy sometimes that we don't actually do the things that would change our life if we just applied them on a daily basis. I sort of laugh because this information comes through and it really is easy. And so sometimes I don't do it. And it's like, what do we need to do? Go run around the block 8 times and come back and then do it and allow it to be easy? I know that's certainly the path I've taken many times in my life, but
Me too.
but I just finally practiced the simple things that changed my life. I started to surrender and go, okay, this is supposed to be easy, effortless, harmonious. When you're in flow with life, when you are in a state of being versus trying to always do and earn and make an effort and control everything, it's just so much easier. And dang it, it is supposed to be fun. We are supposed to be having fun here in our lives, in our life experiences, and experiencing joy. And so as we talk through some of these deeper questions and deeper concepts, hopefully you can find a bit of a lighthearted approach that's easy for you to apply in your life on a daily basis.
That's it. It's the more light you hold in that heart of yours, the more fun it is. And I know for a lot of people, when we say those things, they're wondering when they're ever going to get there. And that's what we're hoping to address, is how you can get there. And I know that I prefer the shortcut method, and I'm sure Sara does too, after we have, toiled and gone through that aspect as well. We have found things that actually work to help us get through things a lot faster than allowing them to go along their slow, merry way. And we get dinged all the time. I always think of the Gong Show. I don't know anybody else out there. Do you remember the Gong Show?
Yes.
And it's like, oh, that was the wrong answer. Bam. And you're like, okay, that's no fun. We don't want to do that anymore. So we don't play the Gong Show anymore. And we want to free all of you from that show too. It was great fun when you can laugh, right? And that's the point, is that we're going to laugh our way through these higher dimensional consciousness discussions and make them just to where it makes sense. And so we really want everybody to participate and to write into us and comment and let us know what comes up for you. Because the other great things about what we plan to just let fly is, what does it trigger for you? Because that's a huge learning moment for each one of us and you as well, because it tells you where the root of the problem may be. So if I may, I'd love to throw out a question that we've received to you, Sara. Are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Awesome. Maja writes in, can you offer a perspective on forgiveness in relationship to moving into the multidimensional way of being?
Oh, good question. I think forgiveness is one of those doorways into living a happy, joyful, meaningful life. And I think this is something we all have to really practice, because one of my favorite analogies about this is, I started to notice in situations where I hadn't forgiven, that I would find that I would be sitting somewhere or doing something, and this conversation would be happening in my head to this person who wasn't even there. May have been years since I had seen this person. Usually it was a former lover or partner in some way. And I would notice that I had, on one side of my shoulder, it wasn't the devil and the angel, it was the prosecutor and the defense attorney. And I would have a prosecuting attorney on one shoulder that was prosecuting them for everything they ever did wrong, had really documented everything that they had ever done wrong, and was, continuing to just berate them with all of these things. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, I had the defense attorney on the other shoulder, which was defending my actions in everything that ever happened. How I was trying to do the right thing, how I really did care, how I was defenseless in all of these situations. Now, this would be going on with someone like I hadn't seen in 3 or 4 or 5 years maybe, and this would be happening in my head. And if you've ever paid an attorney for anything, paying one attorney is expensive, but the vibrational price you pay for paying 2 attorneys at one time to prosecute that person and defend you at the same time can be a very expensive vibrational price to pay. And that's the key to forgiveness. You are paying a very high price vibrationally to carry resentment or anger, or even carrying the energy of being the victim in the story and making someone else the villain.
True.
And so here's the practice that I use for forgiveness. And there's a couple of different things here, a couple of different ways to it. So take what works for you, practice it. But the first thing is, you've got to catch when that's happening and just say, stop it. I just would have to tell myself, stop it. Stop with defending yourself. Stop with going back into what they did wrong. Just stop. And then I would have to start with forgiveness by saying, all is forgiven. All is forgiven. All is forgiven. All is forgiven. And I think you have to say it 3 times, because the first time your brain's like, yeah, whatever. Second time your brain's like, meh, not really. The third time your brain's like, really? All's forgiven. And then if you kind of keep going with it, your brain starts to shift a little bit, and it will go out and look for some sort of evidence to that being forgiven. And when you feel a little bit better, you begin to forgive more. I believe the ultimate truth is that there is only love. No matter what you have experienced with anybody in this life, it is hurt people that hurt people. And I'll be the first one to tell you, when I was hurt, when I was not living my truth, when I was dimming my light, when I was being a victim instead of standing in my own power, I hurt people. But the person I hurt worse was myself. And forgiving ourselves is sometimes the hardest thing.
Everything is exactly true. And even when you are the victim, or it seems like you are, if you were to stack the, when you're doing the prosecutor, I love it. Exhibit A, Exhibit B is exactly what I saw as you were describing it. When you are finding yourself in that position, forgiving yourself even for being the victim,
yes,
is really big. And I feel often and say it often that start with forgiving yourself.
mm-hmm.
That is the hardest, because we tend, even if we are outwardly blaming others, essentially it's still something going on within you. And therefore we hold it against ourselves because we're afraid we'll do it again, or this, we'll miss the signs the next time, or, and then we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how we screwed up and how you're never going to do that again, or trust that kind of person again, or a relationship, or opening your heart. And wow, do you see how that just snowballs?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is important.
I think it's a really important topic. And if you can start with using some affirmations like, I am forgiven, I am forgiven, I am forgiven. And then you get to the idea that forgive me for a second. We're going to have to edit this out because my damn phone rang.
I didn't hear it.
Well, I lost my screen.
Oh, fun. Weird.
When my phone rang, the screen went out, and now I can't even find you.
Really? I'm watching you.
That's totally weird and not cool. I can't find the Zoom.
Really? Is your video off? Did it turn off your video? I mean, because it is sending you to me.
Yeah. I mean, we'll obviously edit this out. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I can't find it. It's like totally gone.
That is just
there we go. Okay.
You're in?
We'll just edit it out. Okay, what were you talking about?
Forgiveness. The how it moving into the multidimensional way of being. And so how does forgiveness matter on a multidimensional level? And so we're talking about layers.
Yeah, so let's go back to, we can just cut it out. And I'll just say, so I think one thing that has really helped me, and I'd be curious what other tools that you use, is when I think of that person and I think about forgiveness, my definition of forgiveness is not to forgive and forget, but forgiveness is to forgive and then choose to only remember the good. Remember the gift that came from that person. Remember the happy times or the things that you're grateful for. And so the easiest way for me to do that is to just say, instead of engaging the defense attorney and the prosecuting attorney, I send you love. I send you love. I send you love. And it may take me days of that person popping into my mind and saying, I send you love. I send you love. Now, I believe karma is instant, and what you put out is what comes back to you. So when you're sending love out to anyone, what you're opening up to receiving yourself is love and forgiveness of yourself in the situation. And I think if you do this, there will be a moment where grace enters and you really do forgive that person. And you really can align with the truth that there is only love. But in my experience, it only comes after practicing, sending them love every time I think about them. And it may take a day, it may take a month. In some cases for me, it's taken a year for that moment of grace to really enter where I can truly forgive. But it is a practice. So I'm curious, Gabrielle, what works for you?
Absolutely. Filling myself with light, and then saying, I just make the command, I command that my heart be filled with golden light, and I send this light through my heart to your heart, and to that person's heart or whatever. And when, you really are angry at a person, it may be really hard to do this at first. And that is truly the practice piece, because sometimes you can't even say the words in your head because you're so ticked off. And so generally, at that point, you may not be able to do it, but fill yourself with the love and light, just asking for the peace to come in so that you can get to the place where you can send it, and then start practicing the sending. Because, there are a lot of things that hurt us, but as you just said, Sara, what happens is if you're sending out all that prosecutor defense stuff, and where we build a case as to why we're the victim and what we did or didn't do, or all of these things, all we're doing is we're sending out chaos energy, basically. And so what are we bringing back to ourselves? Opportunities for chaos to come and smack us in the head again. And so we are creating that traumatic cycle that repeats itself. And the way to unplug it is just what you said, is sending love and light, or however you want to say it, from you to them. I do it just, through the heart to them, but basically filling yourself first, like you were saying, because this is what changes what you are attracting to you by what is being projected through your energetic field. So this is applicable on the multidimensional level. That was the original question, which is moving into the multidimensional way of being. How does forgiveness help? It helps because you are decluttering all of the energetic bodies that are you. And that is what creates then that strong beaker symbol, just that it goes out, that beacon symbol. I always think of it as the lighthouse, where that strong signal goes out. And then you're drawing to you the opportunities to move forward versus always having to be in a forgiveness mode. That's the other part, right? Is that you don't want to keep drawing those opportunities to always have to be forgiving, right?
Yeah. And I can hear people say, and this comes up a lot in probably coaching sessions that you have, and vice versa, people in my master's class or coaching sessions, they say, what do you mean I need to forgive myself? They're the ones that cheated on me. They're the ones that were verbally abusive. They're the narcissists, right? I would hear that all the time. And maybe it'd be helpful if you and I both just give an example of where we have used this process in our own lives. And I'll tell you my moment of grace.
Okay.
My perfect example of the prosecuting attorney and the defense attorney was when I went through my divorce. And I carried it for quite a long time, where I really wanted to forgive him for everything that went on. And I knew that something deeper was going on there. And so I did. I just practiced this. I just said, I send you love. I send you love. I send you love. I could actually get to plenty of moments that were good things about him, but I was still paying this vibrational price for trying to argue right and wrong. And when I got to this place of what is it that I really need to forgive myself for? And that awareness opened up to me, but I still had to continue to send him love, because what my brain wanted to go to was that all the things that I might need to forgive myself for, what he did was worse, right? And this is the game we all play in our head, no matter what the situation is. And so I just kept doing this. I just said, I send you love. I send you love. I send you love. There's only love. I am forgiven. All is forgiven. And there was this moment where I realized what I needed to forgive myself for. And then it was absolutely this deep, deep, deep lack of forgiveness for myself, which went along with trust in my intuition, trusting my soul. And the truth of it was that I didn't listen to myself. I didn't listen to the voice of my soul. I didn't listen or pay attention to the things that in my entire being I knew were not okay. I thought I could love him enough to make him happy. I thought if I just did everything right all the time, that I could overcome those things that I knew weren't okay. And it was me betraying my own soul by not listening to my intuition, which also was the thing that helped to activate and rebuild my trust in my intuition and be able to hear my soul or my inner voice again, which I think is a question a lot of people ask is, I don't have an inner voice, or I don't know how to hear my inner voice. And I would say that at least for me, it was on the other side of forgiving one of the situations that I most needed to forgive. And at the core of that, it was forgiving myself. So I think it's important to talk about these examples of how we have really applied this and what the outcome has been, so that others know that they can apply it in their life and experience the same, moments of grace and love. So Gabrielle, maybe you could share something about your forgiveness journey.
I'm sitting here as you're telling this story and I'm thinking, gosh, which one do I want to choose? Because as we live our lives, right, we get into a lot of things. And I think of them like they all do come together and they repeat themselves. I don't know why I'm seeing a honeycomb, but so it just reminds me that I'm going to pick one of the ones that truly lasted several years. And that's the issue here, is that when we get stuck on something, it can last for years. There's no timeline, right? And so when my husband and I we had our $1.4 million house in Scottsdale, Arizona. So the thing about this house was that we should have known from before we put an offer on the house that it was a no, okay? So instead we paid to have a feng shui person come, and we did all these things, right? And this house should have fallen through just so many times, and we just kept saying, okay, it's going to be okay, we can make it work, etc. And so we kept basically ignoring our own inner knowing.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to say this house and the purchase of this house was the beginning of the downfall. Okay, and it wasn't because it was 1.4 million. It was just because in general, it was the umbrella under which everything else collapsed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what happened was we bought this house. It was 1.2 million when we bought it, and it needed a complete rehab. Don't even think about it, right? A logical person in real estate, mortgage banking, it doesn't even make sense, right? But we did it, and we ended up putting in over $200,000 worth of rehab. And so when you go into it, you're like, oh my God, right? So obviously we overimproved it. And so we just went from one bad decision to the next, trying to fix the previous decision, okay? Yeah. Then when the housing market was about to crash, we knew in the mortgage industry it was crashing before everybody saw the outline of the symptoms of what was going on, okay? And we could not agree on how to unload the house, right? So we had a lot of emotion in the house, and we put so much money into the house, and oh my goodness, we had all these things. And so my husband and I did not pull together. Instead, we just blamed each other. Like he had his things that he thought we should do, and I had my things, and we were unable and unwilling to come to the middle, right? And we weren't able to get there because we both, I was annoyed that he was in charge of the refurbishing. So he way overshot the budget by a lot. And so, you're like, well, we did this, but we didn't finish this over here. And I don't want to put more money into this because we're never going to get out. So we went on and on. And every married couple knows that all we did was this, right? The whole time. And then, so of course, resentment's building up, and all we were doing was fighting, and it just was horrible, horrible. And when this was all over, as far as our house went into foreclosure, we could never decide in the 2 years between late 2006 before everything really started to crash, but it was already crashing internally in the industry, to 2009 when it actually foreclosed. Okay, everybody, you get that? That's like huge span right there. We could not agree, even though we were going through this now new turmoil that we created because we couldn't agree, but we really were angry with one another.
Yeah.
And so what happened, continue forward. So then in 2013, everybody get that? 2006 late, we're now in 2013. And so much had happened, and we were still together and still trying to muck through it, but we had a lot of resentment for each other. We really were not, we didn't like each other at all. And we went through a lot of periods of really not liking each other. And finally, in 2013, we moved, and this is a terrible story. We moved into a rental property, and the property had bed bugs. It just felt like everything we were doing was just compounding worse and worse. And this house was a gorgeous house. And I mean, it was like unbelievable, right? So anyway, long story short, we went to Ecuador for the summer. My husband finally said to me, just more bad news came, and he goes, "What do you want to do?" I said, "You want to know what I really want to do?" He goes, "What?" I said, "I just want to pack everything in storage, everything, and let's go to Ecuador for the summer." And so he said, immediately, he goes, "Okay." We went to Ecuador. Everything came together for us to do it, meaning money came in. It was the craziest thing. $13,000 came in 7 days. Insane, right?
Yeah.
But that tells you, right? I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
That's where we're supposed to go. So we do. And you want to know what happened while we were there? Something that we could never have planned. We had the time to step out of the rat race and really, honest to God, the first 30 days, it was about letting go.
Yeah.
And then we were able to forgive one another for the parts we played in screwing it all up, right? Or what we perceived to be, or however we want to say it. We screwed it up. And what we both came to is just what you said. It was about not listening to our inner voice from the very beginning. Okay. And so we lived out that whole scenario for, what did I tell you? I don't even know how many years that is. It's a lot, 7 years or so. And so you realize that was what we had to forgive ourselves about, because essentially we were ticked at ourselves for not listening to our own inner knowing when we knew perfectly well we should not have done what we did. And then we kept compounding it by doing more stuff we knew we didn't want to do, and that, keep thinking we could dig ourselves out of the hole. So that was for us. It was about letting go of all that hurt and blame and anger for all the shit that we underwent by making all those choices. And then we were able to forgive one another. And, here we are now, happily married. In fact, my son the other day, who is 8.5, we were at dinner and he goes, "I just want to say, you guys make a really great couple." And oh my God, is that so sweet? Because we just passed our 18th wedding anniversary. So it's nice to know that you can rebuild these things, but you have to let it go first.
Oh, I can identify and relate with that story so much. I'm sure so many people can. And it makes me think of all the times, when we are angry at someone, but underneath it was that we didn't listen to. So, or say what was and wasn't okay for us. So I had this same story as you're talking, just this time that I bought a property with my former partner, and I never really wanted to. I didn't really want it. I didn't really want to live there. And yet I went along with it, and I went along with it. And then it just became this constant argument, and the other side of sort of this blow up about it. I'm like, I didn't even really want it. Well, that's not his fault. That's my fault for not saying, I'm not clear on this, so I'm not going to make a decision. Or it's not choiceless for me yet, so I'm not going to make a decision. Or just saying, no, I know you really want it, but I don't. And I think if we really go one step deeper in forgiveness, it's the way we have kept ourselves powerless or made ourselves feel helpless or powerless in a situation versus really standing in our power and being able to speak our truth. And I have found that as I have cultivated those two things, my own personal power and learning how to speak my truth in a way that is authentic but kind, that forgiveness is not something that is as big of an issue in my life now as it used to be before I've really cultivated those things.
And that's what we said. You finally will get to a place where forgiveness just doesn't play as big a role as it once did. And that's what we're aiming for. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this discussion, is to say, you actually get to the end of this. It's not a continuously repetitive thing. Once you begin doing these key things, you know, being in touch with your inner self, being able to say with love, even if you need more time, okay, or to allow another solution to come in, because we get attached to our solutions. And in that story I gave you, that was our problem. We each had our list of what we felt was the solution, and we could not find a bridge, but we didn't have the knowledge or understanding at the time that we should have pulled back and said, hey, you know what? Let's ask for a higher solution that would have created what needed to be done to fix it. You know, bring in the miracle or whatever. We never did that. And it's the first time I've ever thought of it, actually, is that we never, ever asked for that to happen. We just kept rigidly holding on to what we felt would be the correct solution. And so then we became choiceless in that the solution was decided for us. And so it's a painful lesson, but from there you learn what it is you needed to learn. And then we hope to incorporate that, like in this discussion, that connecting within yourself and being able to speak your own feelings and emotions and work through them too, because just because you're feeling it doesn't mean it's right. That's the part too that's important. Like, just because you feel it, it might be that you're triggered because of something you do need to clear, right?
Yes. And I'm totally okay if we only get through this one question today, because I think it's so important. But even if we only get through a couple of the questions we plan to get to, this is so key to being able to allow yourself to experience a joyful, happy, fun, playful life. You brought up this piece of, to the point where, you know, we didn't have a choice in the matter anymore, and it was sort of decided for us. And I think that is so important. I was thinking about this today, in that, you know, how out of control some things tend to feel. And it only feels out of control because you missed the tap on the shoulder, you missed the knock upside the head. And usually it was from the most well-meaning space. You were trying to do the right thing. You were trying to keep it together. You were trying to follow the rules. And yet at every one of those steps that you said, well, I need to do the right thing here for everybody else. Or I need to do what society says is the right thing in this situation, versus really just stopping that, you know, going along to get along, or numbing yourself to not hear what's not okay, that it gets to this point where it feels like it's out of control. And what happens as you continue to move into more levels of your own personal power and deeper levels of awareness and higher states of consciousness, you get to this point where you can't allow things to be that far from your truth without really noticing that something's not okay, and being confident in yourself and knowing your own worth such that you stop and deal with what triggers you or what is triggering you in that situation, instead of just acting out or dimming your light and not speaking up about what is and isn't okay. And I think that's a really, really important piece of forgiveness. being spiritual does not mean that you do not have emotions, that you do not get triggered, that you do not get irritated with people, that you do not get angry with people, but you do not lash out from your own hurt or your own pain.
Right.
That you sit with, what is it about this that is triggering me? You work through that first, get aligned to your power, get to a space where you know what your truth is, and you can speak kindly from that place. Now, kind does not mean that you don't say, hey, this isn't okay for me. Or I recognize that you want this, but that doesn't work for me. Or that doesn't feel right to me. Or even if you've agreed to something, where you can sit down and say, hey, let's talk. I know I agreed to this, but this isn't working for me.
Oh my God, that is the most important piece, is that just because you agreed, we all know that even when we make an agreement, right, all the tangible and intangible things are not known, right? And it doesn't mean that just because you had initially agreed that means that how it's panning out is still okay. And that is okay. It's about making it that it's not that somebody else is now forcing you. It's about being able to step back. And I think that that's the important piece, is that we never step back to look at it sort of like, I was thinking of it like a periscope, right? So that you're seeing it sort of not attached, but actually just allowing the playing field to sort of sort itself out and go, okay, what about this is not right, or triggering me to feel insecure, or that it's too much, or whatever it is. I mean, I think having that line on that inner trigger, what is it exactly about what's wrong with this? I mean, I get a lot of people who I work with that start with things like, I just can't take it anymore. So, and then whatever it is, right? So when you start with, I just can't take it anymore, and then you believe your solution is basically to throw the baby out with the bathwater, then you know you might be unclear, not having the clarity of what actually needs to be healed or tweaked. And so then you create, like my husband and I did, you create a bigger circumstance of chaos than we would have probably had to dealt with had we stopped and checked within and honored that, and let's say taken the loss if that had been what it was, because we took a bigger loss later than we would have if we just had taken it initially, right? So the point of this is that there is no right or wrong answer, and the best answer comes when you are aligned within yourself to your own self, and that you're not reacting out of fear or out of lack or out of worry. I mean, worry is a big one for people, right? I'm afraid to do it. I know I need to, but blah, blah, blah. All these things can happen, right? And so it makes forgiveness really important, because a lot of times those triggers inside are related to other things that are getting lumped in with your current circumstance. Because again, like I said, we're always trying to make sure we don't make the same mistake again, right? So in our story, it took my husband actually just 2 years after 2013, where he was willing to buy another house. So that was like his thing for all those years, was he just didn't want to do that again. And so that was an interesting way for him to be categorizing, like, I don't want to ever make that mistake again. That's how he was dealing with it. So then we had to work through that. And so that's the point, is that we don't know what it's going to affect later in your decisions that would perhaps limit you in the opportunities the universe is aligning for you. So I wanted to add here something that came to me the other day, and because it totally goes with this whole idea of forgiveness and our understanding of what the universe is providing for us. Because a lot of times we perceive it in ways that may be because of how our emotions are at the moment. We may be seeing it as too risky or something that we're a little bit afraid to do, right? So I've written, a divine aligned risk not taken is an opportunity not received.
Mm.
And there it is. And all of this has to do with being connected from within yourself, forgiving yourself for the old hurts, the old things that have happened that you've participated in that didn't go well, that may be limiting what you are able to bring into yourself now.
Yes. And it does not mean that you, in all cases, let that person back into your life.
Right.
It does not mean that you cannot have boundaries.
Absolutely not. But you know what? Your boundaries are fluid. It's different. I don't know about you, Sarah, but we don't tend to run into boundary issues like we used to. That's probably one of the real benefits that came out of that situation, is that we learned a lot of things, but one of them is that rigidity piece. Just, we were able to release our need for our agenda, I guess, because we're both really strong-willed people.
Yeah.
And so that you begin, once you start this forgiveness piece and connecting within yourself, you'll find that there's a whole lot more fluidity. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I would say that it allows me to stay in the flow.
Yes.
It really just allows me to stay in the flow of life, which is where I think opportunities come from. This is where you get into alignment with the infinite supply of anything and everything you need in the moment. And back to your point about receiving and an opportunity received, you know, when you are in that space and your heart is open and you're not holding on to things and your mind is not cluttered with, you know, living in the past, but you're really in this moment, you see all the opportunities that are showing up for you because you are in flow with life. And I think that's ultimately one of the greatest benefits of forgiveness. So, yeah, great.
Ultimately, it is. Forgiveness is a foundational piece to moving into the multidimension.
Yeah, agree.
With fluidity.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, great conversation. So, are you ready for question 2?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so this question, can you give a very concrete example of what you mean by saying the slower frequencies can be used as rocket fuel for awakening? And this question is from Mary.
Thank you, Mary, for sending in this great question. Rocket fuel for awakening. What can you use for rocket fuel? What that means to me is that there are things you can burn off of your energetic field that will allow you to lift off into the higher frequencies, right? So see, we've used the whole rocket fuel thing. So yeah. It's about letting go of the things that you're holding on to and the things that hurt you. So one of my favorites to talk about with clients is, give me a situation where you felt like your heart was hurt, was torn. I've had many people say to me, you know, it broke my heart. And I say to them, absolutely, on an energetic level, it did actually break your heart. For real, this happens. On an energetic level, when you feel like somebody's betrayed you, it feels like a knife in your heart, right? And so when you think about, how do I raise my frequency? For me, it's all about the heart, your physical heart, yes, your heart chakra, yes, but it's about your high heart opening, okay? So if we have things that have hurt our heart for the most part, those things are going to keep you from having an open heart. It's very hard to have an open heart if you feel like you are vulnerable, right? So if you're vulnerable in that way. So when you have those situations, so I know when I just say this, give me one situation. So Sarah, one situation where you were betrayed or your heart was punctured, or I don't know why I keep getting punctured, but I do. I keep hearing it. It's like punctured or torn, or somebody left you, you know, all of those things.
Yeah, I can tell you the first time I ever felt like I had a broken heart was when my parents told me that they were getting divorced when I was 7 years old.
Wow. So That's really interesting. And I'm sure that's happened for many of the people listening today, that either they've gone through that situation where they're getting a divorce, and or they were children getting a divorce, or their parents were getting a divorce, because this happens a lot in our society, and it's very destabilizing. It makes you feel that things are no longer secure, that we don't really know what's going to happen. It feels it feels like you have no control, and that makes people clench, basically, like they go within themselves to try to, batten down the hatches and waiting for the storm to clear. And it's really, and it continues as people go through their life, where one parent's in, one parent's out, and it depends on how their parents handle it. There's a whole lot that happens. There are many layers of things. So when this happens, I'm going to go back to our previous conversation about forgiveness, because there's a lot there just with regard to how you view your parents, and for them making you feel insecure, right? And taking away that security, even if it's for the best, right? Even if it's for the best. So we have that. And then we have the peace within yourself, that hurt in your heart. And how do you heal it? It is through that forgiveness piece. And then it's going within yourself and healing that piece through light, using light to heal that. Because in energy, the way I see it when I see people on a multidimensional level, when we have a hurt like that, you can actually see like the puncture energetically. So just imagine spider webs, right? So when you slash through a spider web and you can see the hole that it makes, the rest of the spider web stays, right? But you will see the puncture or the tear or the rip. And it's the same way in the multidimensional energetic layers of your heart. So if you think of your heart, and we talk about layers of onions and all that when we talk about healing, right? It's because they're very, very thin, very fine. And so when you know that you have a hurt like this, you call in the light from the highest vibration that you can access. So it would go something like, Mother, Father, God, it is commanded that the highest vibration of light come in and fill my heart to heal this pain, this hurt from my parents divorcing when I was 7, and all other emotions that are connected with that. And you start there, I'm getting shivers, whatever. And so then you release it to the light. That's it. You just say, I release the pain to the light. And the more that you do this, your vibration will rise. And that's what we mean by your highest vibration that you can reach, is because as your vibration rises, you're able to reach higher and higher levels of frequency, which creates greater and greater impact on your healing as well, and your ability to heal yourself. What do you think of that?
Oh, thank you for that, Gabrielle. Perfect example. And I love the meditation or the activation you provided, because it really works in all situations. And I could really feel it. I could feel it as you were saying. If I just allow myself to be in the moment about it and feel it, I could feel a lightness coming in. I could feel something being lifted. And I think we spend so much time asking for, parking spots and all sorts of things that, instead of
to show our true ability.
Yeah. Let's understand that we can give even the biggest things to the light and feel it released in that moment. And I love this question because it reminds me too of that analogy of a slingshot. If you're pulling it back, the resistance is what propels you forward sometimes. So if I go back to the example we were just talking about in my own parents' divorce, I felt unsafe. I felt like I lost my community that I had counted on. So when we have a highly, highly emotional event, we often create beliefs instantaneously because of the intensity of the emotion behind it.
Yes.
To protect ourselves.
Yes.
So in that situation, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to make sure that I never lose control like this of my life again. So I became very independent, and at a very young age, in my early teens, I got very into personal development with this sort of belief that it's not safe to let someone else take care of you. You always have to take care of yourself. And my belief was that if I made my own money and had lots of money, that no one could ever take my safety away from me, or my sense of safety and my sense of home and my sense of community. So, highly emotional experience. I created a belief in that moment that I made my truth, that it is not safe to let anybody else take care of you, and that I was the only one that could ever make me safe, and that money was the thing that would keep me safe.
That's
So
right.
I spent the next 30 years making lots of money and climbing the corporate ladder and amassing money and storing money and making more money. That was my whole focus, so that I would be safe and secure. So
Right.
what then might you think that would present itself as the ultimate lesson to learn, that, and I don't think that this was intentionally set up for me to learn through this highly emotional, difficult experience. But it was my experience, and it was the way that I really learned to surrender to something greater than myself. And this is about letting the light in. This is about letting God in. This is about letting Source, or your higher self,
Mm-hmm.
really be that guiding force in your life, and that your connection to Source, or your higher self, or the light within you, is the only thing that will ever keep you safe. And it's the thing that will always guide you and allow you to feel what you really want to feel. So in my own journey, and how does this propel your awakening experience or your ascension experience? It wasn't until I remember saying, okay, I'm good. I'm good with all this spiritual stuff. I'm on board. I'm all about surrender. I'm letting go of everything except my money. So my money, so that I am in control of how this all turns out. Right. And it was the one thing I was not willing to let go of. So the question being around slower frequencies, which is resistance, which is trying to control things. How does that skyrocket you forward, or how does that serve as the rocket fuel in your own awakening? And it was not until, I will tell you that years and years and years of work on myself versus a moment that skyrocketed me forward in about a 3 months time, where I literally had the experience that I had no access to any money, and I had to completely surrender. And what I realized in that time was that money is just a middleman, that the source that creates worlds is available to you in every moment for everything you need and more. And when you just get out of the way of how that is delivered to you in the most easy, effortless, and miraculous way, you will realize how safe you are in this world, how absolutely loved you are, how abundant you are. And it was only then that I could create a relationship with money and success that was from a place of fullness, a place of wholeness, not from this broken part of me that was trying to protect that wounded part.
Yes.
And
So true.
to me, that changed everything. When I started to see how so much of my life was based on avoiding some unwanted circumstance, and that I was motivated to do all these things in my life from a hurt place.
Right.
And then wondering why I wasn't very passionate about my life, or wondering why I didn't feel very inspired. Motivation is avoiding some unwanted circumstance. So you go out, take massive action, and you do all these things to avoid being hurt again. All based in very slow, dense, lack-based energy. When you let all that go and you start aligning to opening up to whatever is in your highest and best good, to be used by Source in this divine orchestration to be a miracle for another, knowing that in that you will have everything you could ever need and more. And you start opening to that, and you realize that your inspiration comes back, your creativity comes back, your innocence comes back. You start playing, you start having fun here.
You actually start to laugh.
Inspired, yes.
Yes.
And that's an inspired life.
Yes.
And that is how those lower, heavier, dense emotions and hurts can actually, be the rocket fuel, I believe, for your awakening or your ascension.
Absolutely. Because once you recognize them and heal them, they are propelling you forward. But it's that dance. It's a dance, actually. I just see it so different. Instead of always like that mind think piece of what's the symptom? What's happening? Why does this keep happening to me? I mean, that's a common thing for everybody. Why does this keep happening for me? So for you, the making money, I also had if I make enough money, I will have everything I want. And I grew up poor. So it was a big driver for me that I never wanted to be in that situation again. So what did I get to experience? Going back to that situation again. And you're like, wait a second. But it's like you said, like you work so hard to avoid a situation because that's how you're going to fix it. You have your idea of what's going to fix it. And that's what I'm doing, and that's how I'm going to fix it. And then you realize that that is not an actual permanent solution. And so now I say often, wow, the universe arranged that way better than I ever could have. Because, I spent so much of my life plotting and planning and trying to get everything to work out. And God, isn't that exhausting, right? I mean, it's super exhausting to have to be like, okay, what am I doing next and how am I doing it? And you just get totally out of the flow when you're doing that. When you're busy trying to drive the bus, you are missing all the other potential routes that could happen by maybe airplane or maybe by train or something else comes in, right? And so when I finally realized that actually I may have what I have here, and I am very big. I like to speak about it and think about it and ponder it. But then after I get over that human piece, and I allow myself that at times, to do that part where my mind has to think it through. But then when I connect, like on purpose, I connect, I always am amazed, honest to God, amazed. Like, wow, I never thought of that. It's just, I don't know why it surprises me, but it kind of does in a happy way. Like, I just love to be surprised. Like,
yeah.
Oh, I never would have thought of that. That is fabulous. So it's actually become sometimes a game because I like games. I find that the more that I feel like this is just a game, it gets more fun. It's not as serious.
Yeah, I'm having a total aha moment as you were when you said the analogy of dancing, because I like to dance, especially with a partner, and you're dancing and the swing or something, right? And I realized that I had this epiphany about a couple of years ago. I'm like, oh, I'm actually a good dancer and I like to dance, and my partner is a really great leader, which is what makes it really fun for me to dance. And I'm kind of just having this analogy of life. When I used to try to control my life and I didn't let this greater awareness that has some much bigger perspective on life than I do, when I was trying to lead and not let that part of me lead, the dancing was always a little awkward and didn't quite flow, and certainly probably didn't look very great. Now, that I align with this greater knowing that life is not happening to me. Everything is happening for me. And when you trust that, you can trust life to lead you. You can trust whatever you want to call it. God, source, the divine, your higher self, your angels, your guides. You can actually let them lead in this dance because they have the grandest viewpoint of what's going on here. And when you let them lead, the dance is beautiful and it's fun and it feels good. And that's the difference. You know, if you've ever danced with someone that's a really good leader, you know, at least as a woman or a man, if you're dancing and you're dancing with someone that lets you lead, it's much more harmonious. There is a flow. There's just a rhythm to it. It's beautiful. And your life will be beautiful when you let that greater thing lead you in this dance.
I'm laughing because I keep thinking of, and then when you have a dip in your dance, it's okay. Because honestly, just like in the dance, the dip doesn't last very long. I mean, I just can't even say this enough. I mean, with my original example of 6 and 7 years for this whole process to work itself through. Now, when things happen, and I put the quotes around happen because it's a totally different perspective. And this is what we're trying to express, is that because the emotional triggers are healed, as you're identifying them, forgiving them, opening your heart, healing your heart, what happens is you become more expansive and it doesn't trigger you emotionally anymore. So when something happens, actually, you're already in that almost observer mode. And the answer truly comes in right away, like, okay, I'm going to ask to be shown what to do next. Boom. Or you will get the knowing right away of what it is. I can give you a real quick example of this. The other day, my husband, he's in his last stages of his PhD, which is super exciting. But he got an email back from his professor that he wanted him to redo his chapters 1 and 2 of his dissertation. And my husband came to me and goes, oh my God, Gabrielle, that's going to take me months to rewrite it the way he wants me to do it. You know what? It was the craziest thing, but I just got this. I said, it's okay. Just let it be. It's going to be all right. He goes, how can you say it's going to be all right? I said, I just know it is. I said, I get this feeling it's all going to blow over. And do you want to know the truth? In 5 days' time, it all blew over. Like it got recalibrated. He talked to his advisor and he was like, oh yes, I forgot that was the emphasis of what you're doing your dissertation on. So no, you're right. I just want you to break it up a little bit. So no rewrite really. Like a page or two, and it was all over. And I just thought, see, that's the beauty of being connected. It wasn't like rush right out and fix it and whatever. It was just, you know what? It's going to be fine, but you don't overreact as in, you know, there's nothing you need to do. That was the message I got. Like there was nothing you need to do. And that was the truth. And this is why it's so great too, to have a partner who gets it and can, you know, allow that part to come in as well. So that's something that is super duper helpful. But I just want to share that because it seems like sometimes things happen and it's crazy or it creates huge upset in your life. But it's allowing spirit to then come in and show the next piece that needs to be, right? And then there's human error that happens. Just like in this case, it was kind of like some human error there. And it didn't have to be so, but when you're not reacting, then you don't create further work for yourself. Notice the difference, right? So.
I heard the words as you were talking about how great it is to have a partner. When you partner with life, life will send you partners. When you partner with your higher self in this game, your higher self will send you partners. When you partner with God, that's what will be reflected back to you. And everyone in your life will feel like a partner. And there is this greater, and the word is intimacy, but it's not about sexual. But, you know, from the very first time you and I talked, Gabrielle, it was like long lost soul sisters that were just, we just got each other. Mm-hmm. and we could co-create easily. And there was just this ease to what we were doing. We just get each other. And we didn't have to know each other for years and years and years. We didn't have to really get to know whether we could trust each other or not. It was just this openness, this knowing. And I encourage people to, if you're wanting more partnership in your life, if you're wanting these divine playmates to show up, when you start playing and having fun here with your life, people will show up to start playing with you and co-create with you and having fun with you. And I think that connection, community, collaboration, co-creating, that's what we're moving into now. For a lot of us, we've had this time of, I think it was designed for us to spend, this time in isolation. It's my observation that many of us went through this awakening experience in 2006, 7, 8 timeframe, where the life that we knew it no longer worked for us, or fell apart, or fell away. Mm-hmm. This life that we thought was who we were. And yet this new life hadn't shown up yet. And there was this time of sort of solitude and isolation. But that's when we were really going through this experience of, what are your gifts? What do you really want? Letting go of these things that would really propel us forward. And I think now we're coming into this time of really connecting and creating community and collaborating together. But we don't need years and years and years to figure out who that is. It just shows up. And that's when life begins to be this beautiful dance. And for me, I didn't think about life being fun. I was too busy doing all the right things and succeeding, and, this type A strong personality that, you're earning and making it happen, versus realizing that you can get so much more done when you do the things that bring you joy and that are fun for you, and that you start allowing yourself to play and dance with life instead of fighting it.
Fighting it. That was exactly the word that I heard too. It's, you just stop fighting it, and you actually get into the divine aligned flow for you. And then it becomes that adventure in a fun way, versus like, oh gosh, I'm afraid what's going to happen next, versus, oh my God, I can't wait to see what happens next. And same words, different energy. And that's what we mean by rocket fuel and raising your frequency, so that you can shift that from, the one drudgery into one of excitement. And that is the point of where we are too in the whole consciousness collective now. We are making that shift from just trying to figure it out on our own to now, like, giving these shortcuts. How do you get there faster so that we can all move together to what is next, which we don't really know. We kind of have an idea, but it's going to be awesome, because if where we are now is cool, I can't even imagine what's
just
next.
Continues to get better.
I know, right? I mean, that's where you're like, wow, who I just could never have imagined. So I'm super excited about it. And I hope that everyone who's listened today writes in and give us your questions on, what is it that's not working for you? What are you wondering about? Have you heard another teacher speak about that? You really had a deeper question, or it might have triggered you in some way, because that's what Sara and I want to do here together, is address those things and help you to cut through a lot of the BS and actually just figure out how it applies to you, so that you can move higher, faster, and create that life that you're wanting by being your highest version and vibration of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, this has been such a great discussion, Gabrielle. Thank you. Thank you. I know we have lots more great questions for next time, but
we do.
Wow, so much incredible wisdom here. So any final words for us?
Stay in divine alignment. Say yes to those things that resonate with you, and just be amazed. Sit back and be amazed at what unfolds. It's just so much more fun to live life from that energetic. So that's what I hope for everybody. Until next time.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for joining us on the SoulScape.tv show. Go to SoulScape.tv to access the many free gifts from our guests and for more great masterclasses and panelist discussions.